Okay, bring the committees back to order. We will now go to Lake Whatcom Reservoir Natural Resources Committee, and Dan Hamill's the chair.
Thank you, Gene. I am joined this afternoon by council members Vargas and Weiss. We have one item before us today. That is the Aquatic Invasive Species Prevention Program Cost Recovery. And the Aquatic Invasive Species Program is a multi-jurisdictional program designed to prevent infestations of invasive species that can compromise essential public infrastructure, lake ecology, recreational activities, and shorelines. At the July 27th council meeting, council requested that a resolution on program fees and cost recovery be discussed at a future work session. Turn over to Public Works Director Ted Carlson.
Or me.
Or Mayor Linville.
Thank you. First of all, there may have been some confusion about what's in the packet, so I wanted to say very clearly that we thought we understood that this was an issue that the committee wanted to discuss, but that we were starting with what Jack had proposed. So that, I take responsibility for that. So I just wanted you to know, Jack, that it wasn't intentional. This got referred to committee, and then we were going to put forward some recommendations, but we thought this got referred. So if there was any confusion about that, Jack and I have talked about this and had some other suggestions about what we might do. So that's why this is in the packet, Jack. And I've been gone, or I would have probably called you. I mean, mentally gone. Okay.
I was too.
So this is just, this time now to discuss what we want to do.
Yeah, thank you. So Ted Carlson, Public Works Department. This has been referred back to the council to have a discussion about the cost recovery component of the Aquatic Invasive Species Inspection Program, which has been under the current fee structure. We've been recuperating between 30, I think it'll be about 38% this year of our total cost, meaning that the remainder, the costs that aren't supported by or offset by fees, are borne by the three jurisdictions, the county, the city, and the Lake Whatcom Water and Sewer District. And this discussion, as I understand it, was the council having talks about whether or not that recovery rate should be higher. Should we be moving forward towards what in Jack's presentation was a 45% cost recovery, and then ultimately, I think, a 60% the next year through higher increased fees. So I think we've stated the staff's position on this, and we support the current fee structure, and the reasons really are because we think that's how we'll get the highest level of participation, ultimately the highest protection for the source water. We want people to participate in the inspection program, and we don't want to raise the fees and give folks perhaps another reason to go around, or a reason to go around the inspection program. Obviously, we don't know to what extent that would happen. We don't know how high we could raise the fees before we see significant decrease in participation, but from our perspective, the risk of having people go around the inspection program is too great for the lake. So we would rather keep the fees where they are, continue to get participation and education about the program, as it's still fairly early in the program's history. The one thing, after this last council discussion, we talked quite a bit about the staff level, and thought perhaps, certainly be up to council, but perhaps bringing this issue forward to the joint policy group to have a bigger discussion about the future of the Aquatic Invasive Species Inspection Program, because it really is a multi-jurisdictional effort. And I would remind the council that the county council does adopt their fee by ordinance. So whatever the city wanted to do, we would certainly need to have the county council agree to that same fee, as it would be very challenging to have a different fee structure, since the city is the administrator of the program through the interlocal agreements with the county and the district. So perhaps an avenue is to take it back to the joint policy group, where we have representatives from all three agencies, have a bigger discussion about, as I said, the future of the program and how we want to adjust the fees or not adjust the fees, and what the strategy should be. And with that, we're certainly happy to answer questions about either the proposed resolution or other questions you might have about the program or a path forward.
Just one other thing to add. Hopefully, some discussion today will be on, any kind of gradual increase or whatever you may have been thinking about. The other point that was made, I think, very clearly by staff last time was the fact that in states that recover or that have a reduced amount of support locally, it's because the state government has put money in. So I think it behooves us to look at our legislative agenda again. I mean, we had it on our agenda last year, and ask the state to be a partner in this along with the local jurisdictions. So that is another avenue potentially to get some relief for the cities and the county and the water and sewer district.
Okay, open up to committee members. Council Member Vargas.
I'm glad you said that, Mayor, because my assumption about this was that what we were looking at is trying to find options beyond just raising the fees to find different ways to bring money into the program. And I think it makes a lot of sense to have it at the joint Lake Whatcom Policy Committee because we're all in this together, and it kind of seems crazy for us to just solve it on our own if we are all going to have to find a way to bring more funds in. So I actually think that's a really good idea. But again, I wanted to bring up the fact that I'd like for us to review the program itself and be looking for efficiencies in the program to reduce the cost of the program if we can find ways to do that. I know we've been just kind of storming and norming and learning right now, but I think we're at a place that we could review it pretty closely and take a look and find ways to find money. But I do think it is prudent for us to start to increase the amount of money that we are, that is not being paid for through our city budget.
Councilmember Weiss.
Thanks, Dan. Specifically addressing the point that the mayor brought out, that is called for in the resolution as far as, us wanting to try and get a legislative priority going with the state, or to continue doing that, because it is very important. This resolution really has three different things to it. One is, I guess maybe prefacing this is that Ted had made a comment that we don't know what will happen if we increase fees, and I guess that's the reason why I'm bringing this forward is to find out what it will be. We have had fee structures now for the last 3 years that have been constant. There has been no rise in fees at all. There's been an increase of we had an increased category of having non-motorized in there, but we have not actually done any adjustment to the fees at all. So we don't know whether or not, how elastic or inelastic this service that we're doing to recreational boaters at the expense of our water fund and our ratepayers are. And what I would like to do under this resolution is to propose, a modest, this is really a compromise compared to the program that I think that the council initially was thinking was that we would have 100% recovery from day one. So to have a 45% recovery, which represents maybe a 7% increase of recovery for next year, that's pretty modest. To go up to 60% gives both the county and the water district and us a little bit more time to prepare for maybe a little steeper increase. And then finally, to simply say that the water fund's not going to be used as a source in future years after 2017, primarily because we will have a better knowledge about what the state's going to do, and we will have other options available to us, such as the general fund or other revenue sources that we can creatively come up with. That's really the structure of this resolution, and I'm fully supportive of it because it's addressing exactly what we don't know, which is we don't know what the price demand is for this, admittedly a voluntary activity, a recreational activity by boaters at the expense of our water supply. And I think that, what you said, Pinky, we should go and increase we should increase the rate. To me, I think we should be increasing it 100%, but I'm also pragmatic enough to know that we can't do that right now. That's why this resolution is presented the way it is.
Michael.
Thanks, Dan. I think this is an excellent first draft. I think I'd be happy to support a final version of this. To what you said, Jack, these are actually really modest targets, 45% and then going up to 60%. I think it's actually very important that we adopt this as a resolution, as targets. It's a statement of purpose as to where we want to go. I think we'll have a harder time going to our partners, and for that matter, going down to Olympia and pushing hard legislatively for a statewide solution. I think several of us, I know I have said it repeatedly, a statewide solution really is the best thing. Aquatic invasive species travel from lake to lake across the country and across state boundaries. We need a regional and statewide solution. That's the long game. That's the end point. Until we start communicating clearly to other parties what problems we're facing, what subsidy we're having to deal with at the local level, it's going to be hard for us to be convincing. So I think by adopting these targets, A, they're modest and potentially achievable, and B, it really indicates to people what the nature of the problem is. And if we aren't clear about that, it'll be hard for us to get what we need ultimately, which is a broader statewide solution. So I think this is an important tool internally as well as externally.
Thank you, Michael. So just one comment. I guess fundamentally I have a philosophical issue with ratepayers in Bellingham who don't live within the watershed paying for, or who live in the watershed for that matter, paying for recreational activities by a smaller group of individuals. To me, that it just doesn't seem that's very fair. The increase that you provide for here, Jack, for 2016 is the 45% number. I think it's a 7 or 8% increase. I think that's pretty reasonable. I think 60%, that's jumping up another 15 points in 2017. That's harder for me to accept, but I think that's you would find whether or not rate or users would pay that at that point. But I would support the 45%. I do support us working with our partners on Lake Whatcom issues in general, and I think that working with the advisory committee would be prudent. I would generally support this resolution, and I think I could probably get past the 60%. And Councilmember Weiss, your question or comment?
Yeah, just going off of what Michael was saying. A couple days ago, I was driving up from California and going through I-5 in Oregon. They had truck stops, weigh scale, where they would require anybody that had a boat to pull off, and they would do the inspection right off of the freeway on an Oregon, it's an Oregon state program. That's how they were dealing with it, and they weren't relying on cities or counties or districts to go and deal with the program. So, to me, it seems like Washington State is really behind on this and has a lot of catching up to do. That said, I guess what I would like to do is to make a motion to use this draft that I put together as a template for putting it into a formal resolution for us to consider at our next council meeting 2 weeks from now.
I could second that. I have a question.
Yeah, Pinky.
So I just want to understand, Michael and Jack, in regards to your proposal, you're saying to do a resolution now would give us, would be better for us to bring to the Lake Whatcom Policy Committee if we pass this on our own, or if we're passing this versus going and talking to them and finding out as a group if we can do this together.
To me, I think we need to, because when we go to the policy groups, it's our two representatives without really the full backing of the council. To me, it seems like those two members would have much more clout to be able to negotiate what the city's position is or what the council's position is about this issue if we had a resolution going in. As Michael was saying, it's a target. It's certainly open to negotiation with the other entities. To me, I don't have a problem with that, but I also have a strong interest in wanting for us to state what our our position is. To me, this is exactly the same thing that's going on with our negotiations with the jail. We need to go and tell the county what it is that we want in order to be able to start the negotiations. And that's what we'll be doing later on tonight. This is kind of a similar, it's an similar type of thing where we would go and tell the county, tell the district, this is what our position is. We're willing to negotiate this, but this is kind of where we feel like the general direction is. And by the way, it has been stronger as far as the direction in the past. It's just that we're trying to be, providing a compromised, a more practical solution to the problem. So that's I guess what my thinking is. And I don't know, Michael, if you're sharing the same thing, but.
So the motion is to craft this document into a resolution to then bring to the full council at the next meeting. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Motion passes. Bring this to full council this evening. End of committee.
Thank you, Dan. We'll take another minute. We'll be back with Finance and Personnel.